Welcome to the FML podcast, the podcast on a mission to uncover actionable insights, explore the latest trends, and to catalyze your fintech's growth. Join Growth Gorilla's founder and managing director, Shamir Sajdev, and some of fintech's hardest-hitting marketers and leaders.
Welcome everyone. Today's episode of the FML podcast. Today we're joined by Paul Jarratt, VP of Marketing Communications at Onfido. Not Onfido, as I've been told.
Correct, yeah, it is Onfido, yeah. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. Thanks for coming on today. For everyone listening today, could you just share a little bit about your journey so far and how you ended up at Onfido?
Yeah, so I started my career over about 20 years ago in marketing communications. I actually began my career at a PR agency in London, in a tech PR agency. And from there went on to a couple of other agencies and then decided to go in-house with a company called Symbian. Don't know if you remember them, but they were the leader in the smartphone operating system at the time, before Apple came along. If you remember your Nokia N95s, we were the powerhouse behind them. At that point, they were looking to kind of expand into the US, and I moved to head up marketing for them in North America. I went through a number of different startups after I left Nokia, and then ended up at Mozilla doing developer communications. And then I went to my first AI startup, a company called Sentient Technologies, where I ran marketing and PR for them. It was actually the first company to get a $100 million investment at the time. It was like 10 years ago, so it was a big deal. One of the first AI companies to do so. That went on for about 4 years until we got sold to Cognizant. And then I left and joined where I am now at Onfido, where I'm heading up marketing, communications, and sales enablement.
For anyone listening who doesn't know who Onfido are, we should be very, very surprised. Can you just tell us a little bit more about Onfido, what you guys do, and then perhaps also, what your role as VP of Marketing Communications encompasses?
Sure. So Onfido is a global leader in identity verification. We're founded in 2012 by 3 Oxford graduates, and they wanted to broaden access to online services by making identity verification more accessible. So, instead of having to go into a bank and hand over your passport, wait 10 days for your application and your identity to be approved through credit bureaus, and then come back, sign paperwork, send that back to the bank, and then wait another 10 days to get an account opened. They thought it'd be much easier to essentially be able to take out your passport or your driver's license, take a picture of it, have that verified that it is genuine, then have you take a selfie of yourself and have that selfie matched to the ID, the photo in the ID, and then prove who you say you are online that way, instead of having to then wait 22 a month to get your identity approved. Get it done immediately and get your account open there and then. So that's really what they did, and we've kind of taken that concept and really, tried to simplify it and progress it and make it as easy for financial services companies and gig economy companies that want to kind of onboard drivers or allow people to buy prescription drugs online or even gamble, for companies to actually know who they're dealing with on the other side of the computer.
Anyone who's sort of in the fintech space, would have come across Onfido. I think, your client list is the who's who of fintech, really. In terms of your role as VP of Marketing Communications, and did you say sort of and sales enablement as well?
Correct, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, could you kind of take us through, I suppose a top line of what your responsibilities are and what areas of the business that you look after?
I, started off over 5 years ago on Onfido. I came in to help the marketing team and essentially grew my roles. I've been there starting with global communications. So I've been doing a lot with corporate communications, announcing investments, announcing partnerships with companies like Salesforce and others. I've been doing a lot of product communication. So, we have quarterly product launches now. So supporting those and making sure that, the press are aware of those. I do analyst relations as well. So working with Gartners of this world, Forresters, making sure that their analysts are aware of what's coming on a roadmap so they're not surprised, and that they can include stuff in Magic Quadrants and Forrester Wave reports. Those are obviously very good for us when we're marketing to our prospects and our existing customers as well, because they want to see that we're innovating and that we're continuing to progress and lead the industry. So that's incredibly important to us. I recently took on customer marketing as well, so I have someone that reports into me in that realm. And the focus of that is to make our customers speak for themselves in terms of the success they're having and providing case studies. We put together a quarterly CAB where we invite our customers into the office or we go visit them, talk about some of the pain problems they're having, how we can solve them, review some of the successes we've had. We've recently started a big G2 campaign where we're getting customers to review us. We now have over 90 reviews on G2. I think probably one of we are the leading identity verification provider on G2 on about 8 or 9 quadrants right now. Really driving success and helping our customers talk about how we're helping them onboard more customers more quickly. And then finally, sales enablement, working with our sales team to put together training, to put together sales plays, playbooks, and the tools, that they need to be successful in their roles.
Like you said, Onfido's been around since 2012, and they've pretty much been the go-to platform for identity verification. Naturally, their competitors have sprung up, and I've seen, alternative providers pop up. One of the things you mentioned, obviously, was, communicating things to Gartners and Forrester about pipeline of features and whatnot, coming up. On that note, how does, Onfido stay ahead of, emerging trends and technologies to actually then deliver cutting edge identity solutions, knowing that obviously that, you've got a host of competitors on your tail?
So from a product point of view, as I mentioned, we have these cabs quarterly with our customers. So I think the most important thing that we're doing is to really take on board feedback from our customers on where they are moving in the industry. So, user experience is a big thing for them. How quickly can I onboard our customers with at the same time, following compliance and regulations, right? There's a moving myriad of different regulatory policies that are coming out through Europe, like EIDAS and ETSI, and our customers need to know that we can make it easier for them and distill the complexity of that market when they're onboarding customers. And having things like ETSI compliance out of the box really helps them and ensures and provides trust with us that we can deliver, the expansion and scalability that they need when looking to, move from, let's say, Europe to the US or vice versa. So I think the CAB and getting that customer feedback is one important thing. The other thing is, being on top of and ahead of these regulatory policies that are coming out throughout the world and making sure that we can have our customers be compliant out of the box and with ease. We have a product called Onfido Studio, which is like a kind of a no-code workflow where you can actually decide which countries you're going to operate in. You can drag and drop different compliance tools into the workflow so that you know that you will be compliant when you're moving cross borders. So it's things like that where we can really kind of stay ahead of the game. Other things like in the marketing side, we're starting to use more and more generative AI tools. We all know that content is king when it comes to lead generation and growth. So, one thing that we've really been successful in is using more generative AI tools to help our content flow and quantity. We still have humans in the loop because I think we're not quite at that stage yet where we can fully have AI run off with things and create whole blogs on itself. But we are certainly seeing AI take a significant role in our marketing toolkit.
I'd love to dig in more into talking about a bit of AI, really. We've been talking about it all the way since sort of early summer when ChatGPT kind of came out, and it's kind of been on the forefront and kind of everybody's kind of got an opinion on it. Do you see AI as being a replacement for certain marketing roles, or do you see it as it being complementary to existing marketing roles?
I mean, at the moment, I think it's very complementary. I used to manage the content marketing team here at Onfido, and I'm still very closely connected to how they work and the content they're actually working on itself. What I've heard is that they've been dabbling in ChatGPT, Anthropic's tool. They have a competitor to ChatGPT to really help them speed up their processes. So instead of having to spend, let's say, 6 hours on writing out 2 or 3 blog posts, they can cut that time down into like 2 or 3 by, shortcutting the process of getting a good solid draft before, having to actually put pen to paper, so to speak. I should add that doesn't take away the element of, reading through it, editing it, and, fine tuning it for the audience that we look to kind of attract. So I don't think it's going to be a completely autonomous solution. And I don't think we're anywhere near that yet. But, who knows?
Obviously, there's multiple use cases for expediting content production. And like you said, you're not taking away from the people that have to then go in there and edit the copy and the content and all the rest of it. I suppose from your perspective, do you see it as an SEO play to perhaps try and corner the market on relevant terms for Onfido to drive in traffic? Or do you see it more as an opportunity to be using more sort of top of the funnel content when you're pushing the content out, say on LinkedIn, or is it just both?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. Probably where we're having most success is top of funnel content. I think you've got to be a bit more prescriptive, further down the funnel. Because we have very specialized audiences. We're targeting kind of the compliance professionals, the user experience product managers. So, when you get further down the funnel, I think you have to be a bit more focused and a bit more specific to a degree that perhaps Claude and these other generative AI tools can't quite get to yet. You also have to be careful, with some of the content you put into these tools, right? To make sure that you're not divulging anything that's proprietary. So I think a little bit of a balance between who you're trying to target and how you try and target them. And I think they're successful for part of that journey, but not all of it.
Again, on the topic of AI and content, I think some of the best content writers that are out there, their process kind of always involves speaking to subject matter experts within the business. That's a competitive advantage within itself, right? Because, your SMEs have knowledge that isn't openly and widely available. Therefore, by producing that content, you can drive in, obviously, traffic, whether it's organic or SEO, whatever it may be. In the way that you're using AI, how are you managing that? Because I would imagine that if you're putting commands into whichever AI tool you're using, it's, using data points from public sources that are not your SMEs. So how are you then, leveraging your SMEs to input into your content pieces?
It's a good point, and I don't think you can to the full extent. What we tend to do is we start from a place where we have a knowledge base in, let's say, for example, we have fraud experts at Onfido, a guy called Simon Horswell, who heads up our fraud lab. We tend to do like a brain dump with him first, and then, from there, ask the AI to help us create something that's readable and conducive to our audience. I don't think you can start at a point where you ask the AI itself to give you all the data points around, how we detect fraudulent documents, for example, because it just won't do the job correctly. So I think there's certain limitations with generative AI as it stands, and you got to be careful with plagiarism and other things that it can come up with that aren't accurate. I think they call them illusions, don't they?
I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. I had the full intention over the Christmas period to sit down and have a proper play with some of these AI tools. And after about half an hour, 40 minutes of making basically stupid images on, I can't remember the name of it now, on one of the tools, that's about as far as I got into it. The only thing I learned is that they can't do fingers properly. But I fully intend to have a go.
One of our creative team has a lot of success using a lot of the Adobe generative AI tools now that are built into the product to kind of help finesse and come up with new ideas and mood boards for themes like our most recent fraud report that came out. One of the themes for our fraud report was actually, deep fakes. And they were like, how do I communicate deep fakes to our audience? And they used generative AI in Adobe very successfully to come out with a very convincing illustration to depict, what the fraud report was all about. So I think there's a lot of different use cases for it. We also use it in helping us edit down podcasts, transcribe podcasts that we do, to then put blogs up about them. And that all helps SEO, right? So I think we're only going to see bigger and better things coming from AI in the future as marketers, I think.
I don't disagree with you. I think kind of going back to my earlier question about sort of replacement or complementary, I think my view is that it will definitely be complementary. I do think, I'm speaking sort of very biasly, being an agency owner, but I think it'll be a huge help to agencies, because theoretically you should be able to churn out a hell of a lot more work in shorter time frame. Things like, for example, producing ad copy for Google or any ad copy on any platform, really. Things like for static images and illustrations and stuff like that for ads that you're running on various platforms. It can really, really cut down the time. Like I said, we were mucking around with the image ads. It was actually my designer and I that were doing that. And we were trying to see how we could kind of get it to work. And what we worked out was that it's actually very, very good for sort of like abstract type of illustrations, and you can do a lot there. But anything with people, it seemed to be a bit dodgy. That in itself is, a big win. It's a large part of your work.
Totally.
On the topic of AI, but kind of moving over a little bit to product, Onfido's, been an AI-powered identity verification provider since day one, really. So I suppose from that perspective, how do you see AI impacting Onfido over the next few years? And I suppose, therefore, your industry as a whole.
And I keep talking about fraud a lot, but that it's part of our core business to detect and stay ahead of fraudsters. We recently put out a 2024 fraud report, which talks a little bit about how what we're seeing in the fraud landscape. And one of those things is that we're seeing 31x increase in deepfakes. Now, deepfakes use generative AI, right? So when you're looking at people trying to spoof our system, the biometric selfie part is part of the process. And we're seeing more and more fraudsters, as digital identity verification becomes more prevalent online, we're seeing more and more fraudsters use generative AI and some of these cheaper AI tools out there to try and spoof our systems. And, we have to stay ahead of that. And we're using AI as a tool to kind of combat that. It's a kind of AI versus AI arms race, if you will, partly, whereby we're using generative AI to create fake identity documents and also fake selfies. So we're able to train our system. The thing with AI is that it's only as good as the data you feed it. One of the shortcomings of other identity providers is that getting enough training data is hard, right? Because you work with customers and they hold on to a lot of the data through, because of data regulation and so on. There's only a certain amount of data you can get your hands on. So now that we've launched this fraud lab, we're able to recreate synthetic data at scale. So we're able to retrain our AI very quickly to recognize new spoofing techniques, new fraud rings. We've caught over 28 fraud rings over the last year alone, where we're seeing people or criminals, reuse synthetic IDs in various different use cases and across different geographies. And so we can spot those, we can detect them very quickly, we can then let our customers know about them and therefore be more successful moving forward. So I think in that respect, AI is being a massive win for us. And because we have about 40 AI researchers in-house, a number of which are PhDs, we really have an upper hand there.
AI is a bit of an arms race. Obviously, you were talking about sort of good versus bad here, but also from a competitor perspective as well, you're naturally going to have competitors on your heels who are constantly developing tools and whatnot to try and obviously move the identity verification process further along. How do you, in your role as VP of Marketing Communications, make sure that Onfido stays sort of head and shoulders above the competitors and then, I suppose, become the preferred choice? Because in reality, you're not attracting, small brands here. You're talking about entire sort of, overhauls for, ID and V systems for banks, for gambling brands, other financial institutions. So, how do you make that happen?
I think it's three things, really. I think it's one, making them understand that we are staying on top of things like user experience and finding what I would call friendly friction, the right amount of friendly friction, which is the ability to get customers onboarded with as few clicks as possible, while at the same time making sure there's enough friendly friction in the process to prevent fraudsters and catch fraudsters in the process. So I think it's staying on top of some of those best practice methods. We have user experience experts internally that constantly look at how we can improve the user experience. One of our most recent product innovations is something called Motion, which is the biometric check that we do. And essentially what it does is it recreated the user experience for people when they're onboarding from, moving their head from left to right like this and calling back a random set of numbers to instead just moving their head slightly to the left and slightly to the right while also filling in a kind of a circle around their face so they know what the action should be very intuitively. And we've seen that improve onboarding rates exponentially, just that little change in the user experience. So it's things like that. It's things like having great developer tools and easy to read documentation for the actual people that are implementing our product, an API, an SDK. We constantly get feedback from our customers saying that, we have some of the best documentation out there. And that's one of the main reasons that they love us so much. Because obviously, if it's not easy to integrate with existing systems, it's no fun at all to kind of put in throughout the wider company as well. And I think the last thing that we do is, we have policy people internally that are constantly out there looking at the changing regulatory environment, looking at what's coming. Like I mentioned, ETSI regulations in Europe, these different AI acts that are coming into fruition, EIDAS, and really kind of preparing our product for these upcoming regulations that are appearing. Something that's new is going to be QES in Europe as well, qualified electronic signature. So being able to say that we already have these or we're already working towards these features and solutions that will make it easier for our customers to be instantly compliant out of the box really puts us ahead of the game.
The way I interpreted it was you work with them to obviously gain feedback and have open lines of communication so that you can produce content that will support them.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So my question was going to be around kind of what does that process look like and how do you measure that and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we have a quarterly CAB where we're inviting customers to come in. Some of our biggest customers come in and give us feedback. We also have an innovation forum where we're looking to get feedback from their developers, people actually who are touching the code, and the amalgamation of both gives us a good sense of the kind of content we look to put out to attract new customers, right? So we know regulatory compliance is a big hot topic for our customers. One of the new things that we're seeing is reusable identity become more and more important for our customers as they start to read, the analyst reports that say reusable and reshareable identity is the future of digital identity verification. So we put out more and more content around that, and not just content, but we actually take action on that feedback. Recently, just over a year ago, we acquired a company called Airside that is a US-based company that has a reusable identity product that works with airlines in the US like Alaska and American, and it allows their customers to go in and essentially only have to verify themselves once, before they go to the airport. And then when they get to the airport itself, all they have to do is show a QR code and they can whiz straight through baggage checkout or customs. So it's things like innovating around that kind of technology, talking more about how, things like reusable identity and KYC are becoming more prevalent and how they can be simplified in the market that we're in.
In terms of reusable identity, I think Singapore have rolled out almost like a digital ID card that everyone signs up to, and they can effectively just then use that ID card. Obviously, they're verified once, and then they can use that digital ID card to open up a bank account, open up a trading account, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Is Onfido looking into that space, and is that an opportunity?
We're looking at the technology that Airside has provided us with, which is kind of like this, reusable wallets and shareable identity technology, and looking at how we can apply that into different, industries. Obviously, 80% of our companies are in the financial services industry, we're looking at how we can bring that reusability to the banking industry. You have things like Verify.me in Canada, where you're seeing a lot of the big banks, come together to allow customers to sign on for one bank account with a doc and a face check, but then allow them to kind of keep that identity stored on their phone in their wallet and provision access to it through other banks that may be in the same network. Let's say, for example, if I want to get a mortgage with a different bank rather than the current account that I already have, they can just say provision access to it from their phone without having to go through that re-verification process and check, which is both timely and costly for our customers to do. And for their customers, it's inconvenient, right? So being able to just hit yes, share my data and my verified identity with X bank is much more convenient. And it's something that we are heavily investing in now to make that happen.
One area that I did want to talk about and touch upon was sales enablement. Do you mind sort of very briefly sort of explaining exactly what is sales enablement? What's your approach to it, really?
Sales enablement is essentially making sure your sales team has the tools, the education, and the right framework and messaging in which to help them, close deals, essentially. And that can be done through a number of different methods and tools that are out there on the market. We have a content hub that's called Big Tin Can internally, where we put a lot of our sales enablement collateral and tools. This helps our sales team when they're looking at various different personas that we're going after, what content's going to resonate with them, so they can quickly pull that down and use it with their pitching. It contains decks for specific scenarios and specific case studies. So let's say, they're pitching a car rental service, they can immediately pull down, previous case studies that we've worked with for other companies in the same area. So they can quickly see, the benefit of, what all those other companies have managed to achieve using Onfido. We hold regular trainings and growth enablement sessions with our sales team, telling them about stuff that's coming out on the roadmap in the next 2 to 3 months so that they can prepare themselves and get trained on the sales process around those new features and solutions that we're about to put out into the market. And, those sessions also give us a good opportunity to get feedback from our sales team about what is working, what is not working when they're, going out and pitching. We then, help them tailor their pitches and so on. We work with a team, externally that helps us do closed and win-loss analysis. So they'll go in to certain customers that we've won deals with and go in certain customers that we've lost deals with. And they'll really do an analysis on why was that deal won? Why was that deal lost? You can really find some valuable feedback. I mean, sometimes it's really surprising. Sometimes it's because perhaps you went in at the cost was too high or the cost was too low versus the competitors. And it really allows you to rethink some of your sales enablement strategies when looking at specific sectors and verticals.
We've done a similar sort of exercise, and I recommend it for anyone who's sort of doing enterprise level or B2B marketing. It's a real eye-opener. It's kind of got two sides to it. You'll uncover some real gems that are absolutely fantastic. And then on the other side of the coin, you realize that you've lost a piece of business or a pitch or whatever it may be for something that was totally preventable. And it hurts your soul a little bit, but it gives you a huge amount of data to build upon. Yeah, I think that's a real gem there. Before I let you go, I'll take you through our quick fire round. Other than obviously the FML podcast, which other podcasts are you listening to right now?
I really like Marketing Made Simple. I don't know if you've heard that one. It's really one I kind of go to a lot. There's a lot more as well, dedicated podcasts that are coming up that are around social media that I like social media marketing. I think social media is becoming more and more important in the marketer's toolkit. So that's a good one as well. There's various ones that I listen to specifically around generative AI as well, which I find fascinating, which I didn't actually realize they had specific podcasts on. The marketing artificial intelligence podcast or the marketing AI show is a really, really good one. So highly recommend that.
Podcasts are getting incrementally more niche, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And then other than Onfido, what's your favorite fintech brand or app or product that you like to use?
I really like using Coinbase. That's one of my favorite apps. I do a bit of crypto trading, but also trading in shares. And I find that one really easy to use. not just because they're a customer of ours, but because they're it's a great user experience. So I'd say that's one that I really enjoy using.
What books are you currently reading, or would you recommend to our listeners?
I don't have any specific books at the moment that I'm reading. I'm a big advocate of the Harvard Business Review. I love reading some of the marketing pieces that they put out regularly. I think they're fascinating. Highly recommend that if you haven't looked at it so far.
And then my last question, probably my favorite question is, what's one thing that I haven't asked you that I perhaps should have?
Where does AI go from here? I think the answer to that's a tricky one, right? Because you've got a lot of different camps. You've got the Elon Musk of this world, speaking as a kind of a doomsday scenario, but also investing in it heavily. So like what's going on there? You've got a lot of other people that, saying, used correctly, AI is a tool like any other that can be very productive and an important part of how we advance humanity, right? Through things like, new drug discovery, new ways of finding more efficiencies in the workplace like we talked about today, and really, providing an opportunity for people that perhaps haven't had an opportunity from the outset. So I think watch the space for AI, because I think it's only going to get more and more prevalent and important in the workplace and in how it impacts society and life as a whole.
I think it's a perfect place to wrap up. Paul, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
The FML podcast is brought to you by Growth Gorilla. To find out how our marketing growth experts can boost your fintech's growth, head to growthgorilla.co.uk. And make sure to search for the FML podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Growth Gorilla, thanks for listening.